Congressman. Boy, it sure is good to see you again, Mr. Michael Guest. How are you doing?
I'm great, and thanks for having me back on this morning.
Now we're getting ready. We're just a few days away now from, and I rate this, and you can tell me how people feel in your circle that you run with. This is one of the biggest elections that I can remember in my memory that really matters about voters getting out and doing something and voting.
You're exactly right. And we've heard that term used before, that this is the most important election in our lifetime. But I truly believe that with what we've seen over the last 2 years, the direction of the country that we've seen under one party Democrat rule, that this election is, if not one of the most important in our lifetime. And that is, then the election is going to be decided by voter turnout. And so it's very important that voters go to the polls on November the 8th. And that they elect conservative Republicans to retake Congress.
And no matter how you slice this, and I've seen different prices thrown out to the public, but I remember while President Trump was in office, I was paying in the Meridian area $1.69 a gallon. I'm seeing yesterday the cheapest that I saw was $3.03. Now, you can paint that any way you want, but that comes directly from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
No doubt. Now, we saw the president day one come in, shut down the Keystone XL pipeline, which would have allowed us to export oil from Canada, our closest ally. He shut down drilling in the Gulf on national lands, and he has pursued this green energy policy that has driven up the cost of gas, of fuel, and of energy. And we're all paying for that. You talked about the price of unleaded gasoline. Look at the price of diesel. When the president took office, it was roughly $2.65 a gallon nationally. Now we see that diesel continues to hover well over $5 a gallon. And that impacts everything that we purchase, because everything that we buy in a store is placed on a truck and it is shipped to that location. And so as consumers, we are paying more because of the policies of this administration.
And one of the big things that people that notice right off is gas. The next time that they're on their lunch break and they run through a drive-through to grab a quick burger to go back to work, man, that's $1.50, $2 more easily now, if in some cases even more than that. And it's only so much the working man can take.
You're right. The days of the $5 footlong that we used to see at Subway are long gone, and will probably never be back. And so even though we have seen wages increase slightly, the wage increase does not offset the increase that we've seen in prices that everyone is paying for everything that we purchase. The goods that we buy, the services that we pay for, everything has gone up. We are still at that 40-year high inflation mark, 8.5% to 9% interest. And we saw, just this week, we saw the Fed have to raise interest rates by 0.75 of a point to try to bring inflation down. And much of that inflation, if not all of that inflation, I believe has been driven by the energy policies of this administration and the reckless spending policies of the Democrats, where they poured trillions of dollars into an economy that was roaring back after COVID, have overheated the economy. And now we see that this reckless spending has finally caught up with America.
And a lot of people, and it doesn't matter whether you vote Republican, Democrat, or if you're an independent, people vote on what's in their wallets. And this time, I think people are going to vote for that. As you look at this, so many people don't understand that a large corporation, when they're hit with more taxes, they're hit with more expenses, they don't expand, and that doesn't bring more jobs to people. And that's right. Where we are.
Yeah, I mean, anytime that the government chooses to raise taxes, that's going to take liquidity out of many of these businesses. They're not going to hire. They're not going to expand. And in many cases, they're going to pass that tax increase on to consumers. So ultimately, we're paying for that tax increase. And I think people need to remember that. We always talk about, or you hear in Washington, people saying, well, we're just going to tax the rich. Right. We're just going to tax, those big corporations. But those big corporations employ sometimes tens of thousands of Americans. And so as we're taxing those corporations, ultimately that tax is going to be passed on to consumers. It's going to harm the economy. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. Businesses because of this economic environment, many are reluctant to expand. Many are reluctant to hire. And so this is the situation that we're currently in based on the policies of this administration.
All right. Next Tuesday, it's going to be a lot of Mississippians that step behind a curtain or stand in front of a booth, and they're going to check or circle, however they do it. Tell us why that they should vote for you, Senator. What is it that you're going to do for us? And remind us of this.
Well, first and foremost, I'll say that there is a fundamental difference in my belief system and the belief system of my opponent. If you research my opponent, he believes in raising taxes, and we just talked about how harmful that is, but he's in favor of raising taxes. He is pro-gun control, and he is pro-abortion. So just on those three issues alone, we are fundamentally different. I believe in limited government. I believe that we should extend the Trump tax cuts that really saw such a boom to our economy. I am pro-life and have a record of that. Being there on the steps of the Supreme Court as Dobbs v. Jackson was being argued, leading the amicus brief on behalf of members of Congress to overturn Roe v. Wade. And then I am pro-Second Amendment, have an A+ rating, have been endorsed every election cycle by the NRA. So those three issues alone, I think, paint a clear comparison of a conservative who would be elected to Congress versus a liberal who would be elected and who would continue the harmful policies if my opponent was to win this election.
And it would change the course of Mississippi and what happens in Washington. Now, of course, you're on what a lot of people don't realize. You are on a lot of committees that do so much for Mississippi, and it takes time to get to where you are, to get to these different levels.
That's right. I have the opportunity to serve on both Homeland Security and Transportation Infrastructure, two very important committees. Homeland Security, the thing that we will be laser focused on going forward next Congress is aggressive oversight on the Biden administration of why they have either been unwilling or unable to secure our border. We see the flow of immigrants that have come across our country since President Biden has been in office. We've had more than 3.5 million immigrants encountered on the southwest border. To put that in perspective, that's a number greater than the population of the state of Mississippi. We also see the flow of illegal drugs coming across the country. It is something that impacts every community. And we see that nationwide in the fact that the leading cause of death for Americans 18 to 45 is now, in fact, drug overdose. So we have to get back to the successful policies of the Trump administration, where we were able to secure our border and we were able to stem the flow of illegal drugs coming into the country. And then we mentioned transportation infrastructure. We know how important that is to every region of our state: roads, bridges, water, sewage, rural broadband. Those are the types of investment that the federal government and state government need to be partnering together so that we can create an economic environment where we see that Mississippi is flourishing.
Now, with what you're hearing on the street, do you think that there's enough confidence across the voting, across the nation, that the Republicans will take back the House and the Senate? What are you hearing?
I'm very confident. And while I have no crystal ball, it is something that I follow religiously, particularly over the last several weeks. I think it is clear that Republicans will retake the House of Representatives. The question is how large will that majority be? I was predicting very early on it would be about a 20-seat flip. But I'm beginning to think that number may be low. Was on a call yesterday where this particular group predicted that Republicans would pick up a minimum of 13 and a ceiling of 30.
Wow.
And they had raised that over the last week just based upon what they were seeing nationally. So I'm confident that Republicans will retake the House of Representatives. And I'm becoming more and more confident every day that we'll also retake the United States Senate. We need a net gain of 1 seat. The Senate comes down to 3 races, all of which we see are now trending in Republicans' favor: Nevada, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. Republicans, and the Republicans must win 2 of those 3 seats if we are going to be able to retake the majority. I mean, you have other states in play like Arizona with Blake Masters. And while that race is also closing in. So I think that our pathway to victory in the Senate continues to expand. And I'm also becoming more and more bullish that we will not only retake the House, but also that the Senate will also be in the hands of Republicans in January.
Last question I've got for you. I know you're a busy guy and you got a lot of places to go today. In Washington, what do you see? Do you still see Republicans standing behind Donald Trump? And do you see, what's your best guess? Do you think Donald is going to seek re-election? What is your thoughts on all of that?
I believe that the former president will be seeking a re-election. I've seen no signs that would lead me to believe otherwise. So we will see very shortly after the midterms. I think shortly after the midterm elections, sometime between the midterms and right around Thanksgiving, I think we will probably see an announcement out of his campaign that he will be seeking to be the next president. And I think he has widespread support in Washington, D.C. I don't see there be any major challengers on the Republican side. There may be one or two who would get in the race, but I think he will very easily be our nominee. I think the question becomes, who will he be facing in 2024? Will Joe Biden run again, or will he not? I believe that at this point, being Joe Biden, still hasn't made that decision. But I would love to see a Trump Biden rematch in 2024.
Yes.
I think that would be great to see, and I would love to see those two men back on the debate stage again, because I think with what we've seen happen over the last 2 years, and which may continue for 2 more, I think that would give Trump even more of a platform, and I think that he would get a huge number of people who would support him in 2024 if he does choose to run for president.
I think a lot of people as Americans sit back and they watch this and they see Joe standing on stage asking for, bless her heart, the lady that lost her life, him asking for, confused of where he is, and just it's embarrassing, I think.
Yeah, and we've seen that the media has covered up for President Biden. If this would have happened when a Republican would have been in the Oval Office, this would have been the lead story of every news cycle. We see that it is buried by much of the traditional media, that they're covering up for his inability to do his job. And so I think that has impacted many of the decisions that he's made. And I think that hopefully that will be something that he takes into consideration when he decides to run again. I think he's been one of the worst presidents in our history. I think he and Jimmy Carter, as far as modern day presidents, are the 2 worst that we've seen, at least in my lifetime.
He's top Jimmy, I think.
Well, he in many ways, he probably has. It took Jimmy Carter 4 years to cause the damage and destruction that President Biden has been able to cause him to. But 2024 will be here soon. But I do think that we'll hear an announcement from President Trump that he is going to run for president again. And I think he will have widespread support, not only in Mississippi, but across the country.
Well, we certainly appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, Congressman Michael Guest. Y'all remember that Tuesday. We wish you the best of luck, and God bless. And thank you for dropping by for a minute this morning.
Thanks so much, and look forward to talking to you again soon.